The alarm bells rang through every corner of the Galactic Council building on Zentara Prime. Ambassador. Velox ran through the crystal hallways, her purple skin turning pale with fear. She had never heard these alarms before. They meant only one thing: the galaxy was in danger. In the main council chamber, hundreds of alien species gathered in panic. Some had tentacles that waved nervously in the air. Others had scales that changed color with their emotions. The bird-like Catharian representatives flapped their wings in distress. Everyone was talking at once in dozens of different languages. Council leader Scifi stood at the center of the room. Her tall, crystal body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. She raised her forearms high, and the room slowly became quiet. "Citizens of the galaxy," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "We face the greatest threat our civilization has ever known. The Devourers have awakened." A cold silence fell over the room. Even the youngest beings there had heard stories of the Devourers. They were ancient machines that ate entire star systems. They had been asleep for over 1,000,000 years, but now they were back. Velox stepped forward. She had been the one to bring the terrible news. 3 systems have already fallen, she said. The Helix colonies, the trading posts of Gamma 7, and the research stations of New Vega, all gone. There's nothing left but empty space and metal debris. An old Drachnary warrior named Corks stood up. His reptilian face showed deep worry. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Our scouts counted at least 50,000 vessels in the first fleet alone," Velox replied. And there are more fleets coming. They move like a plague across space, taking everything and leaving nothing behind." The room erupted in fearful voices again. Some aliens cried. Others argued about what to do. The small, fuzzy Quillan delegates huddled together for comfort. Zephy's called for order again. "We must contact the ancients," she said. She said only they have the power to stop the Devourers, but everyone knew the truth. The ancients had left physical form long ago. They existed now as pure energy, caring nothing for the material world. They would not help. "What about the Nexus Collective?" suggested a robotic delegate. So their computing power could find a weakness. "The Nexus only cares about storing knowledge," said Cork sadly. "They will not fight." "The Ethereal Empire, then?" asked another voice. "They have transcended violence," Zephy's replied. "They believe war is primitive." The truth was hard but clear. Every advanced species in the galaxy had evolved beyond warfare. They had learned to solve problems with words, with technology, with understanding. None of them remembered how to fight a real war anymore. Young Quinn, a junior archivist from the SE data libraries, had been listening quietly in the corner. She was small even for her species, with large eyes and pale blue skin. Most of the time, nobody paid attention to her. Now she raised her thin hand. "What if we looked for someone who has not evolved beyond war?" she asked in a soft voice. Room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the small archivist. "What do you mean?" asked Cephis. Quinn's hands shook as she activated her portable data screen. "I've been studying the Outer Rim databases. There are records of primitive species that still engage in warfare. Perhaps one of them could help us." Cork snorted with disgust. "Primitives? What could barbarians do against the Devourers?" "Maybe nothing," Quinn admitted. "But they might try things we would never think of. They might fight in ways the Devourers do not expect." Zephy's considered this. It was a desperate idea, but they were desperate. "Show us what you have found," she said. Quinn's fingers moved across her data screen. Images appeared in the air above the council chamber. A small blue planet appeared, spinning slowly. It looked peaceful and beautiful. "This is Earth," Quinn said. "It orbits a yellow star in the outer spiral arm. The dominant species calls itself human." More images appeared. Cities full of tall buildings, green forests, and blue oceans. It looked like a paradise world. "They seem civilized enough," said Velox. "What makes you think they are still primitive?" Quinn touched her screen again. "The beautiful." Images disappeared. In their place came pictures that made many council members gasp in horror. Humans in metal armor, fighting with swords and spears. Massive battles with thousands of soldiers. Giant machines called tanks rolling across destroyed landscapes. Flying vessels dropping explosive bombs on cities. Ships firing powerful weapons at each other across vast oceans. These are from their historical records, Quinn explained. But look at this. She showed newer images. Humans in spacesuits carrying advanced weapons. Military bases with technology that looked almost as good as early Galactic standard equipment. Tech. Are still doing this now? Asked Cephis in shock. Yes, Quinn said quietly. They have been at war with each other for their entire recorded history. They have weapons that can destroy their own planet. They have turned killing into a science. The council chamber erupted in disgusted voices. Monsters, someone called out. Savages said another. How do they even survive as a species? Quinn waited for them to quiet down. That is what makes them interesting, she said. They survive because they are very good at war. They adapt. They improvise. They never give up, even when they are losing. Showed more images. Human soldiers fighting in frozen wastelands, scorching deserts, and flooded cities. They seem to be able to fight anywhere, under any conditions. Look at their tactics, Quinn continued. They do not just fight with superior numbers or better weapons. They use deception. They attack from unexpected directions. They target supply lines and communication networks. They fight dirty. Cork studied the images with growing interest. As an old warrior himself, he could appreciate what he was seeing. These humans do seem to understand warfare, he admitted. But they are so primitive, protested a Zenteran diplomat. How could they possibly stand against the Devourers? Quinn brought up tactical analysis of human conflicts. Excel at something. Called asymmetric warfare, she explained. When facing a stronger enemy, they do not fight fair. They use guerrilla tactics. They make the enemy's strength work against them. She showed videos of small human forces defeating much larger armies using ambush tactics, sabotage, and psychological warfare. The council members watched in fascination and horror. They also have something else, Quinn added. Human spirit. When their survival is threatened, they become incredibly dangerous. They will sacrifice everything to win. Cephis looked around the chamber. The faces of the council members showed a mix of disgust and desperate hope. These humans, she said slowly. Do they have space travel capability? Limited, Quinn replied. They have reached their moon and built stations in their star system. With our help, they could travel between stars. They would fight for strangers, asked Velox. For species they have never met, Quinn hesitated. Unknown, but humans seem to have a strange sense of justice. They often fight to protect others, even at great cost to themselves. If we explained the situation, they might help. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Many council members were horrified at the idea of asking primitive warriors for help. Others argued that desperate times required desperate measures. Finally, Cephis called for a vote. All in favor of contacting Earth and requesting military assistance? The vote was close, but it passed. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had decided to call upon its most primitive warriors. Very well, Cephis said. We'll send a message to Earth. We will ask these humans to save us all. As the council session ended, Quinn remained in her corner, still studying the images of human warfare. She wondered if they had just made the right choice or the worst mistake in galactic history. The message to Earth would be sent within the day. Soon the galaxy would learn what happened. When you called for saviors, but got monsters instead? Admiral Kate Murphy stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars blur past the viewport. 6 months had passed since the alien message arrived on Earth, and everything had changed. The message had been simple but terrifying. An entire galaxy was under attack by ancient machines, and they needed Earth's help. Most governments on Earth had thought it was a hoax at first. But when the alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit 3 weeks later, carrying technology that was clearly beyond human capability, the world had to accept the truth. Humanity was not alone in the universe. Admiral, called Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan from the communications station. "We're getting more readings from the alien fleet ahead. They're definitely moving away from our position." Murphy nodded grimly. The Galactic Council had sent ships to escort humanity's first interstellar fleet to the war zone. But those ships kept their distance, and their crews sounded nervous every time they talked to the humans. "They're afraid of us," said Colonel Ryan Baker, who stood beside Murphy at the command station. His weathered face showed amusement at the situation. Baker was a career soldier who had fought in conflicts on 4 different continents. The idea of aliens being scared of humans struck him as funny. "Can you blame them?" asked Dr. Lisa Park from her science station. She was the fleet's chief xenobiologist, the expert on alien life forms. "They've read our history. They know what we're capable of." The alien message had been very clear about why they chose Earth. They needed warriors. And humans were the only species in the galaxy that still knew how to fight real wars. Every other civilization had evolved beyond violence. They solved problems. With discussion and technology, they had forgotten how to kill. Murphy looked at the tactical display showing her fleet. 12 ships total, not much compared to the massive fleets the aliens could build. But these ships carried weapons that no one else in the galaxy used anymore. Nuclear warheads, kinetic bombardment systems, biological warfare agents, and electronic warfare equipment designed to cripple enemy communications. "Ma'am," reported Ensign Danny Walsh from the sensor station. "The alien escort is requesting another conference call. They want to discuss our tactical approach again." Murphy sighed. The aliens had been trying to understand human military thinking for weeks now. They kept asking questions that showed how different their minds were from human minds. "Put them through," she said. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the alien escort ship. Commander Threx of the Catherian Empire appeared. He was tall and bird-like, with blue feathers and large golden eyes that showed intelligence and worry. "Admiral Murphy," Threx said in his translated voice, "I must ask again about your weapon systems. Our sensors show that many of your armaments are designed to cause maximum suffering rather than clean, efficient destruction. Why do you not use more humane weapons?" Baker stepped forward. "Commander, we're going to war against machines that eat planets. Humane doesn't matter. Effective matters." Threx's feathers ruffled with distress, "But surely there are rules of engagement. Protocols for civilized warfare. Your people cannot simply attack without honor." Murphy and Baker exchanged a look. Aliens still didn't understand. Commander Murphy said carefully, "We don't fight honorable wars. We fight wars to win. The Devourers won't show you honor or mercy." "Why should we show them any? Because we are better than they are," Threx replied. "That is what separates civilization from barbarism." "No," said Baker flatly. "What separates winners from losers is willingness to do whatever it takes. Your civilization is very advanced, Commander, but you've forgotten something important. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to become a worse monster." The transmission ended with Threx looking deeply troubled. The alien escort ships moved even further away from the human fleet. Dr. Park shook her head. "We're terrifying them." She said they asked for help, but now they're wondering if they made a mistake. "Maybe they did," said Captain Pete Johnson over the CUM system from his destroyer, the UES Vendetta. "But it's too late to change their minds now. We're almost at the battle zone." Murphy studied the intelligence reports that the aliens had provided. The Devourers were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. They were ancient machines, possibly millions of years old. They moved in massive fleets, consuming everything in their path. They turned planets into raw materials and used those materials to build more ships, but there were things about the Devourers that bothered Murphy. Their tactics were very predictable. They always attacked the same way, massive frontal assaults. With overwhelming numbers, they focused on destroying the largest enemy ships first, then worked their way down to smaller vessels. They never used deception or misdirection. "They fight like a computer program," Murphy said to Baker. "Very logical, very efficient, but not creative." Baker studied the tactical data. They've been winning for so long that they never needed to adapt. Every species they fought used similar tactics: big fleets, heavy weapons, direct confrontation. But "We don't fight that way," said Dr. Park. "Exactly," Murphy replied. "We fight dirty, we fight smart, we fight to survive." Lieutenant Commander Sullivan received a priority message from Earth Command. "Admiral, we're getting an update from home.
Ooh.
The President has authorized use of all experimental weapons. Restrictions." Murphy felt a cold satisfaction. Earth's leaders understood what was at stake. This wasn't just about saving alien civilizations. If the Devourers finished consuming the galaxy, they would eventually reach Earth. This was a fight for humanity's survival, too. "Attention all ships," Murphy broadcast to her fleet. "We're approaching the combat zone. Remember your training. Enemy's going to outnumber us by thousands to one. They're going to have better technology and bigger guns. But they've never fought humans before?" She paused, looking at the determined faces of her crew. "They're expecting heroes, noble warriors who will fight fair and die bravely. But we're not heroes. We're soldiers. And soldiers do whatever it takes to complete the mission." The first enemy contacts appeared on the sensors, a massive devourer fleet moving toward a populated star system. The alien ships were enormous, some of them the size of small moons. They moved in perfect formation, like a mechanical swarm. Captain Johnson's voice came over the comm. "Admiral, my ship is detecting over 3,000 enemy vessels. Our alien friends are requesting that we fall back to a safer distance and wait for reinforcements." "Negative," Murphy replied. "All ships, begin attack approach. Vendetta, take your squadron and flank them from the asteroid field. Make them think you're the main attack. Retribution will move in from behind their supply ships." "Ma'am," said Ensign Walsh nervously. "The aliens are saying this is suicide. They're begging us to retreat." "Ach!" Murphy looked at the tactical display. The Devourers had noticed the human fleet and were turning to engage. Their formation was exactly what the intelligence reports had predicted. Heavy ships in front, support vessels in the rear. Perfect military organization. "Tell our alien friends to watch and learn," Murphy said. "Today they're going to see what happens when you ask monsters to solve your problems." The battle was about to begin. Humanity's first interstellar war would show the galaxy what Earth's children could do when their backs were against the wall. The Devourers had conquered countless civilized species, but they had never faced anything like human military doctrine. Dr. Park checked her biological warfare systems one more time. Colonel Baker reviewed the boarding action plans. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan prepared the electronic warfare packages that would disrupt enemy communications. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting an enemy that had never been defeated. But they were human, and humans had been fighting. Impossible odds for thousands of years. The stars would soon learn why the galaxy's most peaceful species had called upon its most violent one. The battle at Helix Nebula began exactly as every other battle in galactic history had begun. The Catherian and Zentaran fleets formed neat battle lines and moved forward to engage the Devourers in organized formation. Their ships were beautiful and powerful, gleaming with advanced technology that humanity could barely understand. The Devourer fleet responded predictably. 3,000 massive ships arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns and began moving toward the Allied forces with mechanical precision. Their dark holes absorbed light, making them look like moving shadows against the stars. Admiral Kate Murphy watched from the bridge of the U.S. Retribution as the conventional battle began. Energy beams and particle weapons lit up space between the two forces. The alien ships fought with incredible technology and brave crews, but they followed the same patterns that civilized species had used for millions of years. "They're fighting like a chess match," observed Colonel Ryan Baker. "Very organized, very predictable." "Which is exactly what the Devourers expect," Murphy replied. She activated the fleet communication system. "All human ships, begin Phase 1. Captain." Pete Johnson's destroyer U.S. Vendetta broke away from the main battle and disappeared into a nearby asteroid field. To the watching aliens, it looked like the humans were retreating or trying to find cover. But Murphy had other plans. "Vendetta, report status," she said into her communicator. Johnson's voice crackled back through the static. "We're in position. Admiral, the asteroids are providing perfect cover. The enemy can't get a clear sensor reading on us." While the main alien fleets battled the Devourers head-on, the human ships began doing something that had never been tried before in Galactic. Warfare. They started cheating. Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan worked at his electronic warfare station, sending out false signals and sensor ghosts. To the Devourers, it looked like the human fleet was much larger than it really was, with ships appearing and disappearing all across the battlefield. Dr. Lisa Park launched her first biological warfare package, not at the Devourers' ships, but at their communication networks. She had discovered that the enemy used organic components in their technology. Her specially designed viruses began corrupting their data streams. "Ma'am," reported Ensign Danny Walsh, "the Devourers are having trouble coordinating their attacks. Their formation is starting to break up." Murphy smiled. First part of the plan was working. But the real surprise was still coming. Commander Threx of the Catherian Escort watched in confusion as the human ships began moving in patterns that made no military sense. Instead of engaging the enemy directly, they seemed to be dancing around the edges of the battle. "Admiral Murphy," Threx transmitted, "your ships appear to be avoiding combat." "Are you experiencing technical difficulties?" "Negative, Commander," Murphy replied. "We're just getting started." At that moment, Captain Johnson's destroyer burst out of the asteroid field at maximum speed. But instead of attacking the Devourer battleships, the Vendetta headed straight for the enemy supply vessels at the rear of their formation. The Devourers had never seen this tactic before. In their millions of years of existence, no enemy had ever ignored the main battle to attack support ships. Their programming told them to defend their most powerful vessels first. Johnson's ship tore through the lightly defended supply convoy like a shark through a school of fish. His crew used weapons the galaxy had never seen in space combat, armor-piercing rounds that could punch through ship hulls, followed by Marines in powered armor who boarded the damaged vessels. "This is impossible," transmitted Admiral Vex of the Zentaran fleet. "No organic being can survive inside a Devourer ship." But Sergeant Maria Gonzalez was not only surviving inside an enemy vessel, she was winning. Her squad of human Marines moved through the mechanical corridors. Using tactics developed in urban warfare on Earth, they planted explosive charges, destroyed critical systems, and fought with a brutality that the Devourers had never encountered. "Command. This is Gonzalez." Her voice came through the communication system. "We've secured the enemy ship's power core. Recommend immediate withdrawal. We're going nuclear." Baker grinned. "I love that woman," he said. The supply ship exploded in a brilliant flash of nuclear fire. But this was not a clean, efficient destruction, like the aliens preferred. The explosion sent radioactive debris spinning through the enemy formation, damaging nearby ships and disrupting their sensors. The Devourers tried to adapt. They sent ships to hunt down Johnson's destroyer, but the Vendetta had already disappeared back into the asteroid field. They tried to reinforce their supply lines. That meant pulling ships away from the main battle. Murphy saw the enemy formation weakening and gave the order for Phase 2. All ships begin boarding operations. What happened next horrified them. Watching alien fleets. The human ships did not just attack the Devourer vessels, they attached themselves to enemy hulls like parasites. Marines in sealed combat armor cut their way inside the enemy ships and began fighting in the corridors. Lieutenant Alex Carter led a team of combat engineers into the heart of a Devourer command ship. His men moved like ghosts through the mechanical passages, using night vision and silent weapons to avoid detection. "Sir," whispered Private Tony Williams, "these machines don't seem to understand stealth tactics. They're scanning for us in all the wrong places." Carter nodded. The Devourers were programmed to fight conventional battles. They looked for large energy signatures and obvious threats. They had no concept of soldiers who could move quietly and strike from unexpected angles. His team reached the command center and began planting charges designed to overload the ship's main computer. But Carter had another surprise ready. Instead of just destroying the ship, he uploaded a computer virus that Dr. Park had designed specifically for Devourer technology. The virus spread through the ship's network, causing systems to shut down randomly. Weapons misfired, navigation failed, and communication systems began broadcasting human rock music at maximum volume. "What is this noise?" demanded Admiral Threx over the communication channel. "Psychological warfare," replied Baker. "Call it heavy metal. It's designed to interfere with their audio processors." The main Devourer fleet was in chaos. They're perfect. Formation had collapsed as ships tried to deal with borders. Computer viruses, false sensor readings, and supply problems all at the same time. For the first time in their existence, they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Sergeant Gonzalez led another boarding team onto a different enemy ship. This time, her target was the vessel's memory core, the computer system that stored tactical information. "Ma'am," reported Corporal Steve Davis, "we've accessed their database. These machines have records of every battle they've ever fought. They study their enemies and adapt their tactics." "Not anymore," Gonzalez said grimly. She activated a data bomb that would corrupt the enemy's historical records. "Let's see how well they fight when they can't learn from the past." The battle was turning into something unprecedented in galactic history. The Devourers, who had conquered countless civilizations through superior numbers and technology, found themselves unable to cope with an enemy that fought without honor, mercy, or predictable tactics. Captain Johnson's destroyer attacked another supply convoy, this time using kinetic bombardment, simply dropping chunks of metal at high speed to punch holes in enemy hulls. Lieutenant Carter's engineers had infected 3 more command ships with computer viruses. Dr. Parks' biological weapons were spreading through the enemy fleet like a plague. But the most devastating weapon was something the galaxy had never seen. Before human creativity in warfare, every time the Devourers adapted to one tactic, the humans switched to something completely different. "Admiral," reported Walsh, "enemy fleet is beginning to withdraw. Repeat, the Devourers are retreating." For the first time in galactic history, the ancient machine race was running away from a battle. They had never faced an enemy like humanity. Creatures who fought like wild animals, but with advanced technology and tactical intelligence. Murphy watched the enemy ships flee and felt a cold satisfaction. The aliens had asked for saviors, but what they got were monsters who were very good at their job. 3 months had passed since the first battle at Helix Nebula, and the war had changed completely. The human fleet had grown from 12 ships to over 50, with reinforcements arriving from Earth every few weeks. But it was not the number of ships that worried the Galactic Council, it was what the humans were doing with them. Ambassador Velox stood in the observation deck of her flagship, watching a human operation in progress. Below them, the planet Koros 7 burned. The world had been a Devourer factory, building new ships and processing materials from conquered systems. Now, it was a wasteland of fire and twisted metal. "This is madness," Velox whispered to herself. "Colonel?" Ryan Baker stood beside her, his face showing no emotion as he watched the destruction. "It's effective," he said simply. "That factory was producing 300 Devourer ships per month. Now it's producing nothing." The planet Velox protested. This could have been saved, cleaned, restored to life. Baker turned to look at her with cold eyes. "War isn't about saving things, Ambassador. It's about winning. That planet was feeding the enemy war machine. Now it's not." Through the viewport, they could see human ships continuing their bombardment. But these were not the clean energy weapons that galactic civilization preferred. The humans used kinetic bombardment. Massive chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. When they hit the planet's surface, it created explosions that could be seen from space. "Captain Pete." Johnson's voice came over the communication system from his destroyer. "Colonel, we've confirmed complete destruction of all manufacturing facilities. No survivors detected. Any prisoners?" asked Baker. "Negative, sir. The Marines found some Devourer drones that were damaged but still functional. Per your orders, they were terminated." Velox felt sick. "You executed prisoners of war. It violates every galactic convention." Baker looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Ambassador, those things aren't prisoners. They're enemy weapons that were temporarily disabled. Would you try to negotiate with a landmine?" The moral questions that had been building for months finally exploded into open conflict during the next Galactic Council meeting. Admiral Kate Murphy found herself standing before hundreds of alien representatives, all of them looking at her with a mixture of fear and disgust. Council leader Zephyr spoke first. Admiral Murphy, we are grateful for your assistance in this war, but we must discuss your methods. Murphy stood straight and tall, her uniform clean despite the weeks of combat. What about our methods concerns you? Zenter and Diplomat stood up. Your forces have been using biological weapons. You have destroyed entire planets. You've executed enemy units that could provide valuable intelligence. We're winning, Murphy replied flatly. 7 Devourer fleets have been destroyed. Their advance has been stopped. Our supply lines are broken. Results speak for themselves. At what cost? Demanded a Catherian representative. You have turned this war into something barbaric. Dr. Lisa Park, who had been quietly reviewing her research data, looked up from her portable computer. The cost is acceptable, she said in her calm scientist voice. The biological agents I developed target only the organic components and devour. Technology, they cause no harm to natural life forms. But you're using weapons designed to cause suffering? Protested another alien delegate. I'm using weapons designed to win, Park replied. Devourers don't feel pain the way you do. My bioweapons simply make their organic systems shut down faster. Commander Threx of the Catherian fleet had been unusually quiet during the meeting. Finally, he spoke up. Admiral Murphy, there is something I must ask. Your Marines captured a partially disabled Devourer command unit. It contained data cores that could have revealed enemy strategies. Why did you destroy it instead of studying it? Murphy exchanged a look with Baker. Because we don't need to study them anymore. We already know how to beat them. But the knowledge could have been valuable, Threx insisted. Could have been, agreed Baker, or it could have been a trap. Devourer technology adapts. Every time you study them, you give them a chance to study you back. Better to destroy them completely and move on. Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez, who had been promoted after her successful boarding operations, spoke from her position near the back of the chamber. Sir, if I may, the enemy units we encountered on Koros 7 were different from earlier ones. They seem to be learning from our previous attacks. Murphy nodded. Which is exactly why we don't take prisoners. Dead enemies can't learn new tricks. The aliens looked horrified, but Murphy continued. You asked us to save your galaxy. We're doing that. But we're doing it our way, not yours. Zephyr raised her crystalline hands for silence. Admiral, we understand that war requires difficult choices. But some of your actions seem unnecessarily cruel. Such as, Murphy asked. The attack on the, Devourer Supply Depot at Vega Station, said a Quillan delegate. Your forces could have simply destroyed the facility. Instead, you contaminated it with radioactive materials that will make the area dangerous for thousands of years. Baker stepped forward. That wasn't cruelty. That was strategy. Now, the Devourers can't use that location again, even if they retake it. It's called area denial. And the psychological warfare? Asked Threx. Your ships broadcast disturbing audio. Transmissions during combat. Some of our crews have reported nightmares after hearing your death metal music. If it bothers you, imagine what it does to the enemy, said Johnson, over the communication link from his ship. Their audio processors weren't designed to handle heavy metal at maximum volume. Dr. Park pulled up a holographic display showing brain scans of captured Devourer organic components. The music creates feedback loops in their neural networks. It's actually quite elegant. Their own sensory systems become weapons against them. The debate continued for hours. The aliens accused the humans of being too violent, too creative, too willing to use any weapon available. The humans pointed to their success rate and asked if the aliens preferred to lose honorably rather than win ugly. Finally, Bilox asked the question that everyone had been thinking. Admiral Murphy, what happens after this war is over? What do we do with warriors who have become so comfortable with violence? Murphy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You worry about after, Ambassador? We worry about winning now. As the meeting ended, small groups of aliens gathered to whisper among themselves. They were grateful for human assistance, but they were also terrified of what they had unleashed. The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Lieutenant Alex Carter reported in from his latest mission. Command, we've successfully infiltrated the Devourer communication network. Our virus programs are spreading through their entire fleet system. Casualties? Asked Baker. Minimal on our side. The enemy lost approximately 200 ships to system failures. They're having trouble coordinating attacks now. But it was not just the tactical victories that worried the aliens. It was how easily the humans adapted to each new challenge. When the Devourers developed better shields, humans created new types of armor-piercing weapons. When the enemy improved their sensors, humans developed better stealth technology. Most disturbing of all was how the humans seemed to enjoy the challenge. While alien crews fought with grim determination, human soldiers approached each battle with something that looked almost like enthusiasm. Sergeant Rosales perfectly summed up the human attitude during a briefing with Allied commanders. Sir, the enemy has adapted their hull design to resist our boarding tactics. How do you recommend we proceed? Asked a Zentran officer. Gonzalez smiled. We adapt faster than they do. I've got 3 new ideas for getting inside their ships, and 2 of them involve explosives. The aliens realized they had asked monsters to save them from monsters. But now they wondered if their saviors might be worse than their enemies. The war ended not with a great final battle, but with silence. After 18 months of fighting, the Devourer fleets simply stopped coming. Their massive ships retreated into the dark spaces between galaxies, disappearing into the void as if they had never existed at all. Admiral Kate Murphy stood in the main conference room of Zentara Prime, facing the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council. Outside the windows, reconstruction ships worked to repair the damage from the war. But inside the room, the atmosphere was tense and uncomfortable. Council leader Scifi spoke first. Admiral Murphy, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we thank you for your service. The Devourer threat has been eliminated. Nodded. The enemy calculated that continued conflict was no longer profitable. They withdrew to search for easier targets. Easier targets, repeated Ambassador Velox. You make it sound like they were shoppers looking for a better store? Colonel Ryan Baker, standing beside Murphy, allowed himself a small smile. In a way, they were. The Devourers were programmed to consume resources efficiently. When we made that impossible, they moved on. Commander Threx of the Catherian Empire leaned forward in his chair. How did you make it impossible? Your fleet was never larger than a few hundred ships. The Devourers had thousands. Dr. Lisa Park stepped forward with a datapad in her hands. We made them afraid, she said simply. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers encountered an enemy they couldn't predict or understand. Their programming couldn't adapt fast enough to our tactics. She activated a holographic display showing the final battle statistics. In 18 months, we destroyed over 3,000 enemy vessels. But more importantly, we disrupted their entire operational strategy. They could no longer guarantee successful resource acquisition. Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez, now wearing the rank insignia of a captain, added her perspective. The Devourers were like a perfect machine designed to crush organized resistance. But we didn't fight like an organization. We fought like a pack of wild animals. The aliens shifted uncomfortably at this description. Even after all this time, they found human military thinking disturbing. Zephy's cleared her throat. Admiral, the Council has prepared an offer for Earth. Full membership in the galactic community, access to our most advanced technologies, and permanent seats on all major committees. Murphy waited. She knew there was more coming. However, continued Zephy's, there would be certain conditions. Earth's military expansion would need to be monitored. Your weapons development would require Council approval, and your forces would be limited to defensive purposes only. No. The silence that followed was deafening. Baker's expression didn't change, but his hand moved slightly closer to his sidearm. Several human officers exchanged glances. Finally, Murphy spoke. "You're afraid of us. We are cautious," corrected a Zentoran diplomat. "Your people have proven very effective at warfare, perhaps too effective." Captain Pete Johnson, attending the meeting via communication link from his ship, laughed harshly. "Let me get this straight. You asked us to save your galaxy. We did. Now you want to put us in a cage because we were too good at it?" "It's not a cage," protested Vilox. "Responsible governance. Your species has shown a disturbing tendency toward violence." Baker finally spoke up. "Ambassador, with respect, you have no idea what violence really looks like. Everything we've done in this war has been controlled and purposeful. We could have been much worse." The aliens looked skeptical, so Dr. Park provided clarification. "Colonel Baker is correct. Human military doctrine includes weapons and tactics we never used against the Devourers. Nuclear weapons that can crack planets, biological agents that target specific genetic sequences, psychological warfare techniques that can drive entire populations insane." "Then why didn't you use them?" asked Threx. "Because they weren't necessary," Murphy replied. "We used the minimum force required to achieve our objectives. Nothing more." Captain Johnson's voice came through the speakers again. "Besides, those weapons are designed for use against other humans. The Devourers required different approaches." This statement caused another uncomfortable silence. The idea that humans had developed weapons specifically for fighting their own species was deeply disturbing to civilizations that had evolved beyond internal conflict. Zephys tried to steer the conversation back to diplomacy. "Surely you understand our concerns? Your people have demonstrated capabilities that could threaten galactic stability." "Could," agreed Murphy. "But won't, as long as you don't give us a reason." "The threat was subtle, but unmistakable," Baker elaborated. "The Devourers made the mistake of threatening human survival, made them our enemy. As long as the galaxy leaves Earth alone, you have nothing to worry about." A Quillan delegate spoke up nervously. "What about expansion? Your species will want to colonize new worlds, develop new resources. They could be conflicts with existing territories." Captain Gonzalez answered this one. "There's a whole galaxy out there. Plenty of room for everyone, as long as people are reasonable about sharing. And if they're not reasonable," pressed the delegate, "then they'll learn to be." Gonzalez replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dr. Park reviewed her final reports on the Devourer technology. "There's something else the Council should know. During our analysis of captured enemy systems, we discovered that the Devourers weren't originally machines. They were organic beings, like us, who were consumed and converted by an earlier version of the same technology." This revelation shocked the assembled representatives. "You mean they were victims?" asked Vilox. "In a sense," Park confirmed. "The original Devourer program was probably created as a weapon by some long-dead civilization. It consumed its creators first, then spread across the galaxy. By destroying the current Devourers, we may have freed the consciousness of billions of beings who were trapped in those machines." The moral implications of this discovery added another layer of complexity to an already difficult situation. The humans had essentially committed genocide to save the galaxy, but they had also liberated the victims of an ancient atrocity. Murphy made the final decision for humanity. "The Council's offer is generous, but we decline. Earth will maintain its independence. We'll establish trade relations and diplomatic contact, but we won't submit to outside authority." "That's unacceptable," declared a Zentaran representative. "A species with your military capabilities cannot be allowed to operate without oversight." Baker stepped forward, and his voice carried the quiet authority of a man who had spent his life in combat. "Representative, let me explain something to you. You asked monsters to save you from monsters. We did the job. Now you want to chain up the monsters you asked for help? That's not how this works." He gestured toward the window where reconstruction ships continued their work. "We could have demanded tribute. We could have conquered half the galaxy while you were busy fighting the Devourers. We could have taken anything we wanted, but we didn't. We came here, did the job you asked us to do, and we're going home." Murphy added the final word. The choice is yours, Council. You can have humanity as a friend and ally, or you can try to make us into an enemy, but you can't make us into pets. As the human delegation prepared to leave, young Quinn, the archivist who had first suggested contacting Earth, spoke up quietly. Admiral Murphy, what happens now? How do we know you won't become the next threat to galactic peace? Murphy paused at the door and looked back at the small alien. You don't know. That's what makes us dangerous. But here's what you can count on. As long as nobody threatens Earth or its interests, we'll stay in our corner of the galaxy and mind our own business. And if someone does threaten you, asked Quinn. Murphy's smile was cold as winter. Then they'll learn why the Devourers ran away. The human fleet departed from Zentara Prime the next day, leaving behind a galaxy that was safe but forever changed. The aliens had learned that sometimes salvation comes not from heroes, but from monsters willing to do what heroes cannot. As the ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading back toward Earth, the galaxy settled into an uneasy peace. We're free from the Devourer threat, but they now lived with the knowledge that somewhere in the Outer Rim, species of warriors watched the stars and waited. The monsters had gone home, but they had left their mark on the universe forever.